This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good morning and welcome to the sunrise, or not quite sunrise, safari. This morning, my name is Steph Winterboer and you are watching us live all the way from Djuma Private Game Reserve here in the Kruger National Park. Remember, we're going to be with you for the next 3 hours or so. It is a live and interactive show, so please ask all the questions you can. And we have got a special surprise for you today. Hopefully we can get it up into there. We've got our drone with the thermal camera on the bottom of it, and we are going to try and get that up into the sky and active for all of us to use. In the meantime, you're with myself and David. And we're going to be looking for things around Twin Dams and Treehouse. Apparently there was a female leopard that popped in across the boundary last night, and we're going to see if we can spot her today. Using a whole bunch of things, ranging from thermal cameras on this car to thermal cameras on drones. Oh, there's some Impala in front of us already. So right off the bat, we've got some Impala to show you. Now, Impala are important because they form part of the food chain out here. There you go. You can see these guys. Now what I'm going to do is just switch off the lights so we don't bother them too much. Now you are watching them. It's dark where I am now, so they are now obviously not going to be bothered by our light. You can see how they are lying down, some of them. That is basically what Impala do for most of the evening. Some sleep, some lie down, some stand up. All of them are playing an active role in keeping everyone else nice and safe, facing outwards. And the one on the left-hand side, you can see chewing motion. That is chewing the cud. They're ruminants, and that is the ruminating posture, which we so often see in domesticated cows and sheep. Of course, what they're doing there is they're chewing their, whatever they ate last night and yesterday, they're chewing it smaller, which increases the surface area, and increases the surface area microbes can break down cellulose over, and therefore a much more efficient digestive system than hindgut fermenting would be. And that is what we see in warthog, hippo, and elephant, and rhinoceros. Sporty Amanda, you say, wow, I can drive. Not by choice. If it were given me, I would be walking around here even in the dark, Sporty Amanda. But yeah, I think I can drive a little bit. We'll see over the next 3 hours. You can judge how many times I stall the car, bump into trees, can't get it started. All right, lights go on again, and we're off. Let's go down to Treehouse and go and see what's there. I don't expect much to be drinking at Treehouse. However, this time of the year, water starts to play an increasingly important role in the lives of animals, and none more so than lion, who quite often set up camp around active water holes. And they do that because they know eventually animals must come down to drink. And Sporty Amanda, I'm proving you right today with my ability not to be able to drive, eh? And basically they know that all the food is coming to them, and so they just hang around and pick off what they can. And so maybe, just maybe, we're lucky enough to catch some lions around the pan. Let's hope so. Now, we were expecting a freezing cold morning, and I must say that it is not. We've got about a 15 degrees Celsius is the temperature now, and it's not that cold at all. To be honest, I was expecting somewhere about half of that now, and then including the wind chill factor, somewhere around 0 today. But the cold front that has hit the rest of the country and blanketed a large portion of South Africa in snow has not really managed to get down here, thankfully. David said he was also expecting something a little bit colder, and I, for one, am very happy that it's not so bad. Malika, you'd like to know if I've actually been out here on foot in the dark? Walking around Malika, no. But camping out in the Kruger Park in the dark, camping out in these wilderness areas, I've done many, many dozens, possibly even hundreds of times. And so basically it's like being out on foot in the dark. Your next question obviously is it dangerous? Are you scared? Are you in any type of danger? I suppose if you're not careful, yes, it can be quite dangerous. We do set night watches when we're out here, and that's specifically to safeguard against leopard, lion, or hyena. And those animals do pose a risk, not a significant risk, but a risk. And you obviously try not to move around too much and too far away from your fire if you possibly can help it. Is it any more dangerous than walking around in a city with a I'm a tourist badge on your back? Probably not, to be honest. I'd prefer here over walking around in some of the world's more dangerous places, urban places at least anyway. All right, now James has gone back to the workshop for our technical genius Alex to have a look at what's going on with their drone feed. Not forgetting that we're trying to bring you some of the world's most sophisticated equipment onto the back of a Land Rover in the middle of a wilderness far, far away from any sort of urban setting or any type of massively complex infrastructure. And so it does have its challenges from time to time. And this morning has been one of those. All right, so now we're back at Treehouse. Let's see if the spotlight can pick out anything. Some impala. So we got our hyena. Mic picks for him. Testing 1, 2. All right, so we got a small problem. We've got a small problem with our audio, but that was a spotted hyena that you saw there. And what you were watching it do was call. They call into the ground and they make a very eerie noise. Their call is unlike anything you've ever heard before. A whooping noise is what they say. Just called a few times and then moved on. Let's see if we can get him here. See where he went. Looks like he went down into the river, so. Now, hyena shadow leopard quite often, and they do it because leopard are actually pretty good hunters, and hyena are pretty clever and cunning, and they know if they just hang around leopard long enough that there's a chance for some scraps that are easy to get. In general, hyena are stronger than what lion are, and leopard are, and leopard won't run the risk of getting injured in a scrap with a hyena, and will usually relinquish their kill if they can't get it into a tree. That hyena has now moved into some bush. They can cover massive distances. You know, there's some cases where hyena are said to cover up to 60 kilometers in an evening. I don't know how true that is, but nevertheless, this is some interesting dung. Oh, it's just buffalo. It looked like it was some lion dung. Lions sometimes get a bit of a runny tummy when they've had a lot of meat to eat, and that looked like one of them, but it was just some buffalo dung. Let's see what's happening here. Anna Marie said, hyena in the pitch dark, how can it get any better? Well, if the hyena was busy, if the hyena was attached to something, whether it be cat or food, it would have been pretty epic to see as well. But that calling like you saw there was actually quite nice, and I must say the setting was nice as well, with the tall trees and the dust road. It just has a nice feeling to it. And of course there's the smell that you're not smelling on your side of the world. The smell that we have over here is this dusty, salty smell. There's a lot of potassium and sodium in the sand here, and so we do get these delicious salty smells that come off the ground when the sand has been stirred up, like it was yesterday with the wind. Let's go and have a look in the riverbed here, see if that hyena is not coming down the riverbed. They sometimes walk down the riverbed. Nita, you'd like to know why that hyena was calling like that? Nita, it's a contact call. In this particular area, hyenas don't hang around in large groups with one another. They tend to be solitary or in small groups with each other. And that calling was in part to say that this clan, the hyenas belong to a family called a clan, that this clan lays stake over this area. It was also to let other members of the same clan know, hey, I'm here, so that they don't overlap one another and there's a greater chance of them finding food in this place. So yeah, contact calling is the answer that I'd like to say there, but for a variety of reasons, not just. Let's see if we can see what's going on there. No, hyena not coming this way, so let's go up this road and see if we can catch that hyena again on the other side here. And why they do it into the ground is unique. You don't see other animals calling into the ground like hyena do. They put their face basically perpendicular to the ground and then call straight into it, and that spreads the sound out and up. And I've always wondered, can hyena, I don't know, is it, they're very clever things. There's some impala again. There's a hyena that's coughing a bit in the dust. Sounds exactly like a human coughing, and just so weird. All right, why don't we put the thermal on and show you what toys we've got to play with. Now, there's no lights that I have at the moment. That's in the dark. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be switching to a different colored image in a little bit. And what you there can see is the thermal image of these impala. Now, the purple and the blue and the black are all cold, and the orange and reds are warmer. So the brighter and the more yellow the color, the hotter the animal or the subject that you're viewing, and the bluer, the colder it is. And you can see that these impala are sticking out a bright orange-red color. Now you also notice that the color flicks through some changes. That's just David making some setting changes on the camera and making it a little bit easier for you to see what's going on. Now that's pitch black. I can't see anything, and there you can even see that impala in the center of the screen had urinated, and you can see the puddle lying on the floor there now. Wow. It is very cool. This flare image that you're having a look at the moment is really insane. Have a look at the tips of the ears, how blue the tips of the ears are. And that's because, very similar to our fingers and our toes, our body withdraws circulation. And there's another one relieving itself. Very similar to our fingers and our toes, the the bodies withdraw blood from extremities to keep the core warm. And you'll even notice on the ground there are some dark, sort of light purple, I would say, rather than dark orange patches. And that's where they were lying down. That's residual heat on the floor. That is amazing. Now that is, of course, in pitch black. I can't see a thing. I can't even see my hand in front of my face, let alone what you're watching. And they're around about 50 yards away from us at the moment. Give you an idea of how far it is. You can see major heat patches on the face and on the thighs. And the fur does a pretty good job of insulating them. You can see that it's definitely a cooler color than the face. And that's because that fur is blanketing the body's skin away from us. And so comes across as a little cooler. This one on the far right, you can even see where he was licking himself. That saliva is still warm on their coat on the side. That is incredible. Now what is even more amazing for me is the fact that open patches of ground is blue and they radiate heat a lot. But you can see the trees and the growth in the background over there retain a massive amount of heat, and we have yet to figure out exactly why and how these trees retain the type of heat that they do. But nevertheless, they are warmer than open patches of ground. Now, Justin, you say, what would the bush be like if impala were the dominant predator? Wow. We probably wouldn't be able to view them. I think we'd be extinct following that line of thought if I were. And definitely I wonder the same thing. We just zoomed in a little bit tighter. It's not really a zoom on this particular camera. It's more like a crop, so the image in zoom does lose a little bit of clarity, but not much. I mean, that is pretty much as epically focused as you're going to get using just body heat. Wow. That is cool. All right, we're going to come back to infrared light now, so still not natural light. You're going to come back from that fantastic FLIR image of their body temperatures and of thermal heat to infrared, a slightly different wavelength. And that's still in the dark. And you can see that we haven't changed these animals' behavior whatsoever. Now, the general rule of thumb out here is that we don't use spotlights and we don't view animals sightings-wise that are diurnal by nature, in other words, that are more active in the day, mainly because these impala are here because this is the safest place for them. If we go and crash around, use our spotlights and disturb them, they'll stand up and move off. And we may actually, unknowingly cause one of them to feed itself to something, which we don't want to do. So we're going to move off now and go and look for something else. But the nice thing is that with all this technology that we got at the moment, we can view these animals in that type of light. So now I've got lights back on again. I have a little puddle of light in front of me. You can see over there, but because you're in infrared, you can see a much wider spectrum. I actually have to look at the screen that I have just down here for a better view of what's going on around us. Right, and I've just got some news that James has made his way back to the camp. He's managed to find his way back through there, and that himself and Alex are working furiously on trying to get our drone up and running. Hopefully they'll be able to do it in the next couple of minutes. And if not, we've got the morning with me. Blue Rose, you'd like to know if we can find a honey badger or an aardvark with the FLIR. I'm hoping so. It's on my Christmas wish list. I would imagine that aardvark, being relatively temperature sensitive, are going to be fairly easy to see because they're going to be bright. By temperature sensitive, I mean they radiate a lot of their body heat out into the air, into the atmosphere, and I'm hoping that they're going to be bright enough to see. And honey badger are super active at the moment because food is relatively short, and so their activity periods would increase. And I'm hoping that we get to see some of them as well because they're just going to be out more, out and about more. So definitely keep on watching, and I'm hoping that we can see one together, in fact. Aardvark in the colder portions of the country actually become almost diurnal in their activities. So they move from being strictly nocturnal. Here in summertime, aardvark are only really active around midnight for any lengthy periods of time. And honey badgers are also nocturnal. But during the day in winter, you do find both species out. Especially when it's super cold, aardvark will come out earlier, sometimes into the middle of the afternoon. And you get to see them around sunset, and honey badger will of course be active most of the day to feed that voracious appetite that they have and keeping that metabolism of theirs going strong. That was just a tree that the aerial smashed and almost branch dropped on David. Don't forget, it's an interactive show, as we've been showing you over the last couple of minutes. Ask some questions, make some comments. If you've played with thermal imaging stuff before, why don't you give us a shout back and say what your experiences were? Did you have a look at any animals? Were you using it for any specific reason? And we'll share some stories out here today. So a few of you were watching the dam camera last night and said there was a honey badger that came into view there. So they are around, which is awesome. I actually saw one on the way out, on the way into camp last week. I saw one dragging a leopard tortoise. Can you believe it? Never seen that before in my life. I came around the corner, couldn't really understand what I was looking at. It was unexpected. And when this ball of black and white fur and this round soccer ball sized animal revealed itself and separated, it was a honey badger that was trying to eat a tortoise. It was a female honey badger. She was quite small and delicate, and she ended up trying to drag the tortoise away by its leg, and then left it, and the tortoise was lying on its back struggling to get up, and the honey badger moved off. I think I gave it a bit of a fright, so I moved off myself, hoping that she came back to finish off her meal at least. But that was the first time that I've ever seen honey badger preying on leopard tortoise, especially full-grown ones. My world, your music. You ask what else do honey badgers eat other than tortoises? They really have such a massively wide diet, and as their name would imply, they do also enjoy breaking into beehives for insect larvae, for the beehive's larvae, and a little bit of honey as well, mainly for the larvae of the bees. And but they will eat anything from snakes all the way through to scorpions, beetles. They hunt for mice. I watched a very interesting documentary where a honey badger actually went down a den of some bat-eared fox and ate the puppies of the bat-eared fox. So they really have a massively wide diet, and will pretty much tackle anything that they think they can catch and kill and overpower. Similar, I suppose, in that respect to a monitor lizard as well. White-throated monitor lizards have the... Well, the hyena definitely didn't come this way. I wonder where he went. I think I'm trying to think back now at the nests that I've seen raided by honey badgers, and that fantastic documentary I watched on them. And in it, there's a sequence of a honey badger breaking into a nest. I would imagine that to a degree they'll absolutely lick up the honey. I mean, it's a massive energy kicker with the sugar. I don't think it's nutritionally very valuable for them. I think that the bee larvae themselves would be far more valuable as a food source, but I don't think that they'd not lick up the honey, to be honest. I think it's far too tasty for them not to do that. But pretty much you see them digging into almost anything. They'll dig up dung balls to get to the dung beetle larvae on the inside. They'll eat termites. I was following a tracking sequence once, must have been last season or the year before that, where a honey badger had gone from scorpion hole to scorpion hole and must have eaten about 5 or 6 massive scorpions in probably a couple of minutes. Dug out the scorpion. So yeah, anything and everything that they can catch and kill. The sky is starting to brighten up in the east, and it looks like it's going to be a pretty awesome sunrise. A few clouds on the horizon. There you can see it in the camera there where David's showing you. A couple of minutes. I've always found that just before sunrise it is the coldest time of the day, and that usually the temperature drops a good few degrees. I don't think it really does. I think it's just our own bodies in anticipation of sunrise stop warming themselves up. So while I'm looking forward to the sun coming up, the transition period between now and then I'm not looking forward to. Now we have got a little bit of an update for you. Apparently we've managed to break something with not the thermal drone, but we've managed to break something in broadcasting it, and so we won't be bringing the thermal drone out this morning, unfortunately. And so James will be joining us in a bit, and we'll finish the drive then without the drone, but we have still got the thermal camera on this vehicle, and so when we find something awesome, we'll absolutely kick that back into action again and show you some more awesome FLIR pictures. Now, one thing that I did want to see was a chameleon on the FLIR and see if see how bright they are. That or a snake. The super camouflaged animal, to see if in a thermal image it sticks out a little bit more brightly. And the wind picked up last night. It was still warm. Louise confirms that a lot of you actually feel exactly the same as I do, that you'd like to figure out what these animals look like in thermal. I just want to check here. There's tracks on the floor. Nothing much. It's always a good idea to getting used to the car. Louise is asking where I bought my driver's license. I can't say, Louise. We're now going down a road which I'm hoping that we can see that hyena come up on. It didn't look like that hyena crossed into the riverbed at all, but it did look like it crossed through it. And so I'm hoping that we can see it on one of these roads here. We obviously still are looking for a hyena den on the property. We've lost it in the last few months, and there are many disused hyena dens all over the place. And so the best way is actually to figure out where these hyena go this time of the day. They will be returning to their dens, and so most hyena going in any particular direction at this time of the day are going home. And so following them, or at least getting an idea of where they're disappearing into, might give you an idea of where the new den is, and then we can go walking inside there and go and find it. That's what I'm hoping for, at least, anyway. hyena dens are superb value for sightings, I must be honest with you. All right, Mr. James is out and about, and so you're off to him to say good morning.
Good morning, everybody. I must apologise for our tardiness. We've done our best to get going on time, but alas, the technical difficulties that come with broadcasting a high-definition thermal signal from the air got on top of us slightly this morning. My name is James Henry, of course, on the camera today, and well, waving a torch around and untangling wires behind me is Sebastian, the greatest drone pilot in the world. Sitting behind me on the camera as well. Please talk to us, of course, using the hashtag SafariLive and the chat stream on YouTube. We are going to go and fly the thermal drone now. We just need to get sufficiently far away from camp so that those people snoozing at Vuatela do not wake up to the sound of angry bumblebees, which nobody wants to wake up to. So that's our plan today. We will still attempt to find some interesting life in the sort of coming dawn. I think it'll be darker for a little bit longer than it was yesterday because of the clouds, and so with any luck we will have some nice pictures from the air for you very soon, and then we will vector Steph in to any predator sightings that we might have. I hope that you are all well, and that you have slept and stayed awake well. We slept quite well, didn't we, Steph? Yes? Well, the YouTube viewer will be able to tell that very shortly. The answer, I think, is no, not really. You know, when we look at the roads in the morning, they are normally quite cold, but in the evening after the day, they are quite warm. So, while they definitely hold a bit of warmth after they've been baked in the sun all day, they don't maintain that warmth all night. Sand doesn't seem to be a great insulator. Although, of course, it is a great insulator if you're trying to stay cool in the desert, so I'm not sure why it doesn't hold heat for that long. Anyway, that is the state of affairs. We're heading down to pretty much sort of south middle to take off there. Kathy, it depends very much on the animal. I suppose if a leopard was to step very heavily on a piece of ground and let its foot rest there for a while, then it might leave a little bit of a heat signature. But were you something like or a rhino or an elephant, for example, but if something like a kudu was to take a step over a piece of ground, I think you'd find that hard keratinous hoof would definitely not leave any kind of a heat signature. And I think something like an elephant would have to stand there for a little while, because obviously it's got a very thick callus on the bottom of its foot, and so for the heat of its foot to be transferred to the ground and heated sufficiently to give off a heat signature, I think would be a little difficult. I'm going to ask Louise to tell Steph that we are now going to take off at Philemon's Dip, at least Weaver's Nest, Philemon's Cutline Junction. We're going to take off from there, and we'll fly in a southerly and then westerly direction towards Treehouse Waterhole. So if Steph would like to make his way in this direction, that'd be very useful. Alrighty, I think I'm going to give ourselves a time limit of exactly 3 minutes before we are in the air, and we will see you then.
Alrighty, so now we need to get to where James is, so you're going to excuse us for driving a little bit faster than what I normally do. We're a bit far from James, and but he's flying toward us, and so it should be a lot easier to pick up something between the two of us, and hopefully, holding thumbs, we've got something awesome to show you. I'm glad they got all that stuff fixed. Otherwise it makes coming out this early, you know, a bit of a, not as much as what it could be is what I probably want to say there. Now it is starting to haze over quite a lot. I wonder what it's going to look like once the sun is up. Justin, you wanting to know what animal I'd like to see using the flare? Probably leopard, a honey badger, maybe a porcupine, aardvark, although I think they've probably gone to bed already. But you never know what you're going to catch with this thing. You know, this is a new toy for us as well. And we couldn't believe what we were seeing when we first put that drone up. We managed to share it with you with that leopard walking in circles around Steve's car, and so we really don't know what to expect with this toy. And so it's pretty much it's as exciting for us as it is for you. Yeah, exactly. As Louise said, this is why toys should be played with. All right, so now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be trying to make our way to as close to James as what we can, and then see if we can spot the drone flying around in the air, and sort of hang around in the general area until he's managed to find you something exciting. What is incredible is that you can see things as big as scrub hairs, so this big, basically from 65 meters up in the sky. Janet's. All right, we're going to be sending you over to James. He's got his eye in the sky, up and flying.
Thankfully, we have got our eye in the sky, up and flying, as Steph says, and what we have there, of course, are some antilopes, so we're not going to go and get Steph in to see them. So we're going to fly down towards the waterhole, like I said. So Seb, you just keep going in that direction, and at the next road that you come to, you can turn to the west. So you can see how the wood maintains the heat. I keep saying that to you, of course, but it does amaze me somewhat. And then, of course, the termite mounds are the other hot things that you'll see there. Not sure what that is. Any idea? Down below, right, yeah. Bottom right quadrant, yeah. Now top right quadrant. Let's get over the top of that and see if we can see it. Oh.
Yeah, the picture is not great though.
No, the picture is not spectacular this morning. No, that's a termite mound, I think. I don't suppose we can change the...
No.
Okay, we'll leave it like that for now. There are some more antelope. Alrighty. Have you passed over a road yet? I feel like you may have.
No.
Not, okay. Okay, cool. So maybe just swing to the right-hand side. Carol, the smallest animal I've seen it detect is a scrub hare, and they look like, if the picture's right, they look like little sort of sparks running off in different directions. There's the road. What is that below the road there? Bottom right, yep. That's fascinating. What have we got there? What do you think, Seb? Oh, maybe it is a buff. The one lonely buffalo. That's the second morning in a row we found him. No, I think it's smaller than a buff, don't you? I think it's a buff. Okay. No, we won't look at him. Let's turn to the right if we can. What direction are you facing now? You're facing southeast? Okay, let's turn to the west. We want to go towards Treehouse. So when we turn like that, obviously the picture does lose its contrast, but as soon as we stop turning too much, then it should be a bit better. Right, so we follow the line of that road there. Yeah, let's see what that is. Remember, anything you want to ask about this technology, about what we're seeing, how we're seeing it, make any suggestions if you'd like to. That is interesting. That's quite small. How high are we? 50. Avoid the city. You can operate the drone in a certain amount of wind. I'm not sure what the wind limit is. Do you know what it is, Seb?
Above more than 30 kilometers per hour.
So more than 30 kilometers an hour.
It's not safe.
It's not safe, says Seb. That's an antelope. Let's keep going. Looks like a duiker to me. Swing a little bit right. Flying due west along that road if we can. There we are. There we can see the waterhole in front of us. Oh, Justin, that's an easy answer. I would really love to see a pack of dogs on the hunt early morning just before dawn. I think following them with this would just be spectacular. What's that on the right hand side there? I think those are probably 2 scrub hares. They're tiny, tiny things. You know, when we first started doing this just 4 or 5 days ago, you know, when we saw something that size, we thought we were in business. To the right is the waterhole. Let's just check around there. We've gone over it now. It's just behind. No, it's behind you. Yeah, back a bit. This picture really is odd today, isn't it? If you follow there, that's it there. We're just going to change the setting on the picture. Seb's going to just change something up. Obviously, you know, it's taking us a little while to learn how to use these things and optimize everything. You can see the display at the bottom of the screen's not great. We'll fix that at some stage as well. Do you see the waterhole there? It's in the bottom right quadrant. That's it there. Yeah. There's the dam wall. No, keep going. Go a little bit forward. That's it there. Yeah, you are. Now, unsurprisingly, there doesn't seem to be a great deal having a drink there. I've very seldom seen anything drinking from the crystalline waters of Treehouse Waterhole. We might see an Egyptian goose, if we're very lucky. Alright, let's follow that road up then. We'll go up. Ooh, what have we there? What have we there? What do you think, Seb? Seb is talking to me, by the way, everybody. He's not just ignoring me completely. It's just you can't hear him on the microphone. It looks like antelope to me. Yeah. Okay, let's keep going. Just follow right along that road. Let's keep going there. So you can see how what I'm doing here is I'm just watching this screen, which is exactly the same display that Seb's got on his controller. I'd quite like to show you, Seb, actually, but I'm not going to try and operate the camera. That will result in seasickness for all concerned. Alright, I'm not sure where Steph is at the moment. Let's go and find out from him.
We were following the drone around quite sneakily, staying out of view. And so we've just crossed over the dam wall at Treehouse Dam. And we're going to be doing a loop out through to the western side of the dam to see if we can't pick up anything coming through the thicker bush that feeds into the dam itself in front of us and offers nice refuge for anything looking to stay a bit hidden. We very often find leopard crossing north to south through these thickets, and that is what I'm hoping to find here. Pretty much anything. You saw a giraffe a little bit earlier. You saw what looked to be that buffalo from the drone, which is nice. Hopefully you got a good view of it. And they'll go make a few settings and then get back to us. Now, the sun is rising fairly rapidly. The whole sky is starting to light up. We didn't manage to show you the giraffe. You were busy looking at the buffalo while we were looking at the giraffe. But they are around. The sun is rising fairly rapidly. Let's show you what it looks like. Pretty much given us, there you go. You can see compared to when you were last with us, the sky is a lot brighter out in the east. And you can see those clouds moving at a rapid pace. Definitely a higher wind speed up in the sky as what there is on the ground. You can see these branches of the tree in front of you are not moving fast at all. Now, as we thought was going to happen, the temperature does feel like it's dropped. Not considerably, I must be honest with you, but I'm shivering a little bit inside my jacket. Are you, David? David said he's also shivering just a little bit inside his jacket, so it has dropped in temperature a little bit, but of course once the sun comes up it'll start to warm up nicely. And we were just having a chat around the dinner table the couple of times in the last 2 decades or so when it's been significantly cold out here. And of note was a couple of years ago where it was -2 at the beginning of game drive. So before sunrise even came up, it was -2 degrees, which is, that's in Celsius and of course freezing for this particular part of the world. And that was in 2006. And then in 2000 and something, I can't remember either, but in the early 2000s there was snow on top of the Drakensberg, just adjacent to the Sabi Sands, and that was also a freezing cold day. I remember coming out on game drive and looking at this white crust on top of the escarpment going, I can't believe that that's possible, and going on game drive thinking I'm going to die. Of course, we're all very used to the warm temperatures here. None of us really do well at all in the colder temperatures. Sounded like it was expensive. It's not too bad apparently. So we've got, on the back of these cars, we've got the broadcast equipment that sticks out on an aerial. So we look very similar to one of these caterpillars with the protrusion on their bottom. And normally this is attached to a spring-loaded pivot or hinge. But in this particular one, the hinge is solid at the moment, and so it doesn't bend as much as it should when we go underneath low branches. It just sounds quite bad when you catch it on something. But not too bad. Alright, now what I am going to try and do is see if we can find... Last night, just before we closed the show, I found a beetle that was lying in the open on a tree stump. And my conclusion, it was a hypothesis that I posed, was the fact that the trees we're finding in this thermal imaging camera that we have are showing that the trees are massively warmer than what the surrounding bush is. And I thought that this beetle was absorbing the heat from the tree just before the evening, so gaining as much residual heat as deep into the evening as it could to aid with its own metabolism. Now, the battery ran out, and so we couldn't show you what that looked like, but we're going to try and test my hypothesis to see if I can find another beetle resting on another patch of open wood for you. If we can, we'll definitely show you. So I'm just using the spotlight to highlight any pieces of wood that I think might harbor an insect. Of course, you're still in infrared mode, which means that you on the camera are seeing a vastly brighter picture than what we are out here. So here's a tree, although this one's dead, so I don't think it's going to have many beetles. Now, Carol, you'd like to know if the trees would grow brighter this evening if the temperatures were warmer. I think so, Carol. These trees are glowing like super orange, not quite as intense as those Impala were a little bit earlier, but definitely between the grass and the open patches of sand and living things, they are the next warmest thing. And so I think it's got a lot to do with the sun having shone on those trees a lot, but in the mornings we were finding bright orange trees as well. And so there's something else at play here that, I don't understand, or we don't understand just yet, that is influencing the temperatures of these trees. Now, I know that I'm going to suggest that it's unlikely that it's the water in the ground being drawn up into the trees being significantly warmer, because groundwater is going to be around about 12 to 16 degrees, and that's what we're seeing the grass color is, and at the blue range on the floor, whereas anything above that is showing up orange and in some cases, well, purple, and then into the oranges and reds, and the trees are in the oranges and reds. And so I think there's something else. It's either the wood harboring a lot of heat, or it's just the process of photosynthesis and the massive surface area that these leaves occupy that is warming the fluids inside of the tree's bark significantly. We'll eventually figure it out, I promise, as we go by. So here's a living tree. Let's see if we can find something on the bark. So nothing there. But let's see if we can show you. Is this tree warm, David? So let's see if we can show you what we're talking about here. Let me turn the car a little bit so it gives you a little bit of... You okay? So there you go. We have got a thermal image of this marula tree next to us that you're looking at. So how is that for an epic picture of the bush that you're looking at? That's the same marula tree that you're looking at. Now, the difference between the blue and the orange is 5 degrees centigrade, and you can see that the tree, and in particular the cracks between the bark on the main stem, are 5 degrees warmer than the surrounding bush. Isn't that incredible? So my hypothesis was that these insects are clustering around wounds on the tree, on living trees, not on dead trees, and absorbing what little residual heat they can. There you can have a look as it starts to get up into the tree. Now that's obviously fresher bark, and so that's the tree's branches are more insulated. But you can see where there are rents and cracks in that bark, that the wood, the cambium layer, is much brighter. Good 2 or 3 degrees warmer than what the surrounding branches are. Dave, at the bottom here, at about eye level, there's a hole in the tree. I just want to go and see where a wound in the tree is, because that's where we saw that beetle yesterday. There you go. Have a look at that. Now, if that isn't proof of what I'm trying to say, then I don't know what is. So that's an elephant's tusk is gouged a rent in the tree, and you can see that hidden underneath the bark and very close to the cambium layer, where the tree's transportation vessels are, the xylem and the phloem vessels, you can see how much warmer it is than the surrounding bush. How incredible is that? All right, so you're coming back to the infrared now, and you can see using, not natural lights, of course, because you're using a slightly enhanced image there. But you can see how, to our eyes, there's no difference there. But for an insect who's relying on on environmental temperature to stay alive. That overhang there, right next to the wound in the tree, is going to provide for a significant amount of heat and protection over just being exposed. Interesting, hey? That to me so far has been the most interesting thing that I've seen with this flare. Alright, we're going to get going now, and you're off to James to see how his droning's going.
Well, we're still sitting here. You can see that the day is brightening slightly around us, but we still have our drone up. Unfortunately, the picture not quite what it should be, or what it was yesterday. We're not really sure why. Hopefully that will change over the course of the day. We'll do a little bit of work on it, but for the meantime, let us go up to the sky. All right. What direction are we heading now, Sebastian? Eastish. Okay, and what have we got there on the left? Sorry for the picture break-up there. That's Stefan Winterboer. That's very nice. Let's see if his head is shinier than the rest of his body. Oh, he's wearing a beanie today, so he won't. He's taken his beanie off. And we'll be able to see him. Something behind him. It's a diker, I think. Very nice. You can see his arms are waving. His head is definitely quite a hot spot. We're still flying east, are we?
Yeah.
Northeast. Perfect. So he's turned the opposite way down the road. There, look at the tracks, the four spots the tyres have left. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. We're coming above.
Just keep going that direction, I think. Then when you get to about, say, 300 meters from home, you can turn south. Let's go and look along Shibamu Road. Fascinating stuff. Well, Shamsun, we've seen a lot of antelope herds. We've seen a lot in the way of small things like that scrub hare now to the right and the antelope to the left. I don't think it's that quiet. I think a lot of animals we will miss because they're under trees. So yeah, I don't know.
You want me to go south?
I think go south from there, yeah. To the right. Should be. Shouldn't it? Yes, along that road there. Oh, that's the hyena den. They turn all the way right. Samson, there you can see little spots pretty much all over the place. Largely antelope. But we haven't covered a massive area here. We've covered a fairly small area. So I'm not sure that it's that quiet.
Something running over there.
Yeah, let's go and find out what it is. Maybe it is a hyena. Looks a bit small to be a hyena though. It is a diker. There are more dikers, I think. Do you agree? Do you think it's something other than a diker? Yeah, it's a diker. Antelope. To the right. Now somebody started a Twitter account called Thermal Thelma the Safari Drone. Thank you very much for that. Thermal Thelma the Safari Drone will be very pleased to know that you have made a Twitter account about her. Some more running diker. What have we got there? This will be about as far south as we can go, so once we've looked at what those hot spots are, we'd best turn around. You're also running out of battery, I see. And the signal is no good there for some reason. No explanation for that. Alright, we're not going to see what those are. You want to bring it home? Okay, we're going to bring the drone home now. And basically what Seb will do is he'll push a little button. You might just be able to hear it be going deep, 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 deep. And that means it's reorientating itself and coming back automatically to land just in front of us here in a cloud of swirling dust. It's very deeply unpleasant. So let's go across to Steph before you too have to inhale a whole lot of dust.
Well, I managed to crash into the biggest hole in the whole of Juma on what you can see here being the widest open plain that there is. And we've thrown the entire vehicle into a bit of disarray. David's radio has flown off, the backpack went flying, the aerial fell down. We're quite lucky we didn't sacrifice the FLIR camera to the hole. There's a bunch of equipment lying all over the place. No, it was a decent bump. And David's just going to be cable tying some equipment back that was shaken loose. You're right there, David. Yeah. These things happen, you know, from time to time. I won't move anyway. Let's get that thing tied in. Now, these things happen from time to time. What had happened was an aardvark had dug a hole in the side of the road. And I was fiddling around, as I'm wont to do, with a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't look exactly straight or accurate, and forgot that this aardvark hole was there and drove straight through it with the right-hand side of the car, which on this side, and it was a bit of a crash. You ready to go, Dave?
Oh, yeah.
Alrighty. David, being as handy as he is, managed to secure everything and keep the camera focused, which is no mean feat. Right, so what we're going to be doing now is it's sufficiently light enough for us to come out of infrared mode, which you're going to be doing in the next couple of seconds or so. And you'll notice that the picture will change a little bit. And that is because we will be going to natural light without the enhancement of any of the camera's fancy sensors. And it's because we can see what's going on a little bit better than we were before. And the picture will be a little bit better quality because of it. So there you go. Now you've got full color again. And of course, it's a lot easier to see in more detail now. Alright, it's still coming through. Apparently, Louise says that the change from infrared to full color is still coming through to you. It does take a couple of seconds for everything to happen. And as Louise says, my goodness, my yellow gloves, they are a little bit yellow, I know. I need to dye these things. I'll try and hide them as much as I can. You won't have to look at my ghastly gloves. I still want to make a loop around the southern boundary and go and have a look what's been walking across the road there. I think to have an idea on whether or not this female leopard actually did come in or not would be a good idea. And if she did come in and she crossed back out again, what have I got? Yesterday there was a fairly large herd of impala here as well, so it's not a bad idea to come and check on these herds of impala as you go around with your day. See if you can see anything. They spent the evening here yesterday. Not a sign of them. So something has chased them around. And I'm going to see what it is. No sign of any tracks there on the floor. So Larry, you'd like to know what a dead tree looks like compared to a living tree in the thermal, and that we can show you if we can find two next to each other. But I would imagine that would go and give us some idea as to whether or not it's actually the wood retaining temperature better than living wood or wood in general, not necessarily living wood, but say a wood with less moisture in it, containing more heat than wood with moisture in it. And then we'll be able to start discounting things like just the tree being able to retain a lot more of the sun's heat rather than it being generated by some or other form of metabolism. And so that actually is a very good test, so we'll do that as soon as we find a dead tree and a living one right next to one another. And we'll see what it is. And slowly we'll start to figure out exactly why these trees are warmer than everything else. It's significantly colder now than it was when we left this morning, that's for sure. I can feel every hair on my body sticking into my clothes. It's giving me a hedgehoggy porcupine feeling. Yeah. Right. Now, of course, because Larry wanted us to test the living versus dead tree, we can't find a single dead tree that is around here. We'll get there, Larry. Go to a place that's closer to the river so that we can actually find some more trees. Justin, you'd like to know when my next bushwalk is? As soon as we can, Justin, is the answer. It's going to be difficult over the next couple of days because it's only James and I here, but it should be towards the end of the week. We should be able to field another bushwalk again, and I'm going to be here and around for the rest of the week, in fact. So it should be this week sometime. I'm hoping so, and then we can walk ourselves warm rather than having to sit in the car and try and stay warm with Alright, we're going to go down this road and see if we can find a tree for Larry and I to decide what exactly is going on over here. No. Wendy's being temperamental this morning. I think she's also cold. That is absolutely my weird my driving style. Louise said when you didn't look cold in the thermal, I must stop making excuses. Suppose you are right, Louise. Just deal with it and get over myself, eh? Alright, so we've got a lot of dead wood over here, so now we just need to find ourselves a living tree and a dead one. Let's go for it. So here we have a dead tree. Trying to find at least the same species of living and dead trees so that we've got a comparative study. I think we may have found that here. Let's just park in a nice place. Davey, is that okay?
Righty, well here we are, still struggling with our technology. We've got a couple of sort of drifting problems with the gimbal. We don't really know what that means. It just means basically that the camera is turning to the right without our understanding of why it should be doing so. So what we're going to do is go and give it a kick and see if that doesn't help. Sebastian, would you go and kick the drone, please?
Yeah.
There he goes. Sebastian is now going to kick the drone. He's not really going to kick the drone, of course, because if he was to do that, we would be in a lot of trouble. Sorry you lost Steph there. I'm not sure exactly what happened or why you lost him. So this is the entertainment for the morning. Isn't it entertaining? Look, we can have a closer look at Seb. No, we can't. I don't know how to move this. Yes, I do. There we go. Oh, look at Missy. I'm panning. Oh, very nice. There's Sebastian. He's just fixing the gimbal now. Wonderful. See? I'm now pointing at him. Yes. He looks a little out of focus. Well, yes, I can't focus the camera from here. That's a bit difficult to use. It's not easy operating the camera from the front of the camera. Operating the camera from the side of the camera is much easier. Well, here we find ourselves. So entertaining, I'm sure this is for all of you. Watching Sebastian sitting on the side of the road, attaching the gimbal to the drone. Sebastian, everybody is very entertained, as you can see. Antelope moving at quite a speed when we last landed. We tried to find them again, but obviously then we had this problem. Yes, Andrea, they can. Thermal cameras can pick up ghosts. They're the only things that appear on the thermal camera as green. Everything else, of course, is a heat signature varying from sort of dark indigo up to yellow. But if you see a ghost in the thermal camera, it is in fact green. So it's very easy to see. We've seen 4 earlier today. We're not called ghost safaris, and so we don't generally show them, and you know, some people are a little disturbed by seeing ghosts, and so we don't generally show them. A little bit like we don't show rhino, really, so we don't show ghosts. Yeah, that's the story with ghosts and thermal. Thank you, Andrea, for that question. So, how are we looking there? Me. We're not looking better. Ah, well, the gimbal is no longer drifting, everybody, so that's good. Right, we're going to take off now. Steph apparently has managed to sort out whatever his problems were, and you can go back to him now.
I don't know if I've managed to fix all my issues. That'll be a lot. But definitely fixed the power problem on the car. So there you have a jackalberry tree, and on the left it looks like a dead jackalberry tree that's fallen over. So we've got 2 of the same species, and what we can do is show you the FLIR image in thermal. Alright, so now you're going to see a colored image on your screen, and what we're looking at is the same jackalberry. That's the living one, and you can see that it is warmer. The orange and the red show that it's warmer than the surrounding bush, and there's even something, there's even something alive on the right hand side. You can see that bright orange thing at the base of the tree. That's a termite mound, it looks like. It's a vent from a termite mound. Oh, no, it isn't. It is alive. What is that? That is incredible. You know, we can't see that thing at all with our naked eye. And that is through the bush. I don't know what that is. It looks like a steenbok duiker or scrub hare from here. Because it's so small. That is amazing. Wait, I need to get my binoculars out so that I can actually see what's going on over here. Okay, so I'm just going to vaguely point my binoculars in the general direction of that and see if I can see what we're looking at through the thermal camera. Because I cannot see a thing with my naked eye. And it's just disappeared there behind the bushes. How amazing was that? Oh, hopefully, there we go, so it's come out again. Okay, so I'm just going to use the sticks as a reference. I think I know where it is, basically. Now, even with binoculars trained in that area, I can't see what you guys are looking at there. It has disappeared from view again. Well, let's give it a few minutes and see. There it comes out again. Definitely looks like an antelope of some sort. I would guess a steenbok or a duiker, judging from the size. Yeah, it's definitely, I saw its horns there. It's eating something. Where it's moving. Now, just have a look at that tree again. It's warmer than the rest of the bush. That is amazing. So you can see that a little duiker through a tangle of wood and sticks and branches. There you go, coming out a little bit. Right, so we're going to come out of this flare image for you and come into normal light. And you can see what I'm busy having a look at. So that is what we're looking at. Isn't that amazing? You can see just a tangle of sticks, and even if David had to zoom in there where he's looking and the cameras are one on top of another, you can see what we're trying to look through to see that thermal image. You can see we can see nothing. That is amazing. All right. So let's go back to our dead versus our live tree and see if we can see if there's a difference in the heat. So what we're going to do is just focus our FLIR image again on the living tree. And Louise, when you're ready, you're welcome to go through. All right, so now you're on the colored image again, which shows temperature. And you can see that the living tree is warmer by a few degrees than the surrounding bush. And what we're going to do is just go slowly left, and there's a dead tree of the same species next to it, and we can see that there is still some heat underneath the tree, and almost the same color as the wood on the living tree. I would argue, though, that the wood on the living tree is more exposed and is warmer, but inconclusive at the moment. What do you all think? Send in your comments and see. Let's see what you think. And but I agree with Louise. I think the dead tree is slightly cooler, but not significantly, especially underneath, where it's a little bit more protected from the elements. But there definitely is a little bit more heat in a living tree in the branches up to the top. Wow. Isn't that just the most amazing thing you've ever seen? You can see how crisply focused those leaves in the front of us are. And that's all just using heat, no visual light at all. It is amazing. It is amazing. And they're all the way to the top. And that, to me, shows a little bit more leaning toward the fact that it's got something to do with metabolism. You can see the leaves are all cold. The thinner branches are cold. But as soon as it starts getting to the main trunk, it gets a little bit warmer. And I mean, it's been cold. It's been cold last night. The wind has been blowing. The sun hasn't been up since 6:30 last night. It is now, I don't know what the time is now, but a good 12 hours after that. Amazing. Now, what Larry Ginger and a few others are saying is that potentially the dead tree that we're busy having a look at isn't dead, isn't completely dead, and that we have got a chance that there's still something living in there. To me, this tree looks dead. It's fallen down and is broken. You can see that dead stump there, that black vertical center in the white mass in the middle. That was where the tree was attached, and so this branch that we're having a look at now is broken off of the main stem, and so it's cut off its supply of water and nutrients and minerals and sugars. So I think that this is dead. I do think that there's probably some insulation from the ground. And Jessica says that potentially there's some heat being produced by decomposition. Absolutely, Jessica, there could very well be. I think it's got a lot to do with the fact that there's a little bit of grass cover there. You may find that there's some termite activity around. I think that this particular test was inconclusive. I definitely think that it showed that living trees are a little bit warmer than dead trees, although there is still some heat in a dead tree. And so we need to find two standing dead trees, I think. I mean, a dead tree versus a live tree, same species standing up, and do the test again. But why don't we send you over to James, who's got a live drone flying around?
We have got a live drone flying around. Are you on? I think you're on the drone picture, are you? It's looking much better, our drone picture, at the moment. We're still having a bit of trouble, I'm afraid, navigating exactly where this thing is, because it's, well, I'm not going to give you the technical details of why that has happened, but we're just trying to figure out where we are. Let's turn left a bit from there, Seb. See if we can. Oh, there we are. Is that us?
Over there, I think so.
I think that's us. No, that's a termite mound. Yes, that's a termite mound. Just trying to figure out exactly where we are. Now the picture's frozen. All right, we know what, everybody, we're going to bring this thing home now and go on a normal safari. We've had enough now of this at the moment. Okay, sorry about this. We will try and fix it during the course of the day, and hopefully tomorrow it will be a little bit easier for us. Alrighty, yeah, I think let's go back to Steph.
These drones are giving us some trouble this morning. You can imagine that James is frustrated as anything, trying to get this all this stuff working. But nevertheless, that's why we do this, and we'll get it all sorted out. In the meantime, we're going to sit here and wait for the sun to come up. We didn't quite get the sun cresting the horizon, but we're going to get a sort of false horizon with it coming over the top of the clouds there, and hopefully it'll be fairly similar to what we could expect if we were just watching it from somewhere else, I'm hoping. What I mean by that is that the sky will get this lovely peachy color, which it is now, and then get almost impossibly yellow, and eventually the sun will break through and we'll see it. It should come through in the next couple of seconds or so. But it is a very, very beautiful sunrise. You can see the silhouette of this tree in the foreground, just making it look nice. I wonder if that cloud is actually going to be coming over this side. That cloud is bunched up over the Lubombo mountain ranges on the eastern side of the Kruger National Park, and is there because air is being forced upwards over those mountains and is condensing. There's no mountains here where we are, so we obviously can't get the same effect. But sometimes, if the wind is right, it blows those clouds inland, and especially when we are dealing with a cold front like we are now, it can cause or give us some rain in the middle of winter. It is deeply unpleasant being freezing cold and being wet. We got a hornbill in this picture now as well. These birds are also now balancing between getting out into the open and getting as much heat from the sun as what they can, but without exposing themselves and dropping their core body temperatures down those few percentages of a degree, which could actually shock them suddenly. It's not uncommon to find birds dead of both freezing cold and heat stroke. There's a hornbill. Ladybugs and daisies, you've asked a nice question. Is this what they'd call the crepuscular time between that we're talking about. Now, crepuscular is a term that we use for animals that are active in the pre-dawn and twilight times. And yes, I would imagine so. There comes the sun out the back. So I think we are now just turned from crepuscular to daytime with the sun having crested. I think you probably find that the sun had risen a while ago, and that the actual time for crepuscular was a little bit earlier, when we were seeing that first faint blush of the sky, or flush of the sky. But with the cloud cover, it increased that time period until now, when the sun is super bright, which means that the dust has been blown out of the atmosphere. Still some high-level haze there, which is giving us that lovely picture that you can see. And these trees are just giving it such a lovely look. So for those of you out there who like memories of the day, that is going to be David's contribution. Screensaver that and put it on your phone or put it on your laptop, and when you're driving around today, wherever you're going to be driving around on, have a look at that and remember dawn. The breeze is blowing slightly, and is this dry, grassy, salty smell in the air. We're both shivering a little bit still from last night, although it's not too bad right now. And we are going to have another cooker of a day, I think. Oh, very cool. There's just something about watching a sunrise that sort of just sets the tone of the day. If you can take some time to watch a sunrise, the rest of the day is always good. Very nice. And there, the full disk of the sun looks like it's now just about to come out of those clouds. And that happens, then we'll move on. Our closest star. That light is already 8 minutes old. With the next closest star 4.5 light years away. So if you're traveling at the speed of the light, it would take you 4.5 years to travel to the next closest star. And they are about, I don't know, I'm trying to rack in my brains to try and remember how many stars just in our single galaxy. Call it 100 million stars in our galaxy. 100 million galaxies in just this area of space. An idea of how big space is. There you go. That's very cool. You can see those clouds are going to scud across the surface of the sun, or between us and the sun. Give you an idea of how fast they're moving up there. Might actually make for quite a nice picture. Very nice. All right, Dave, what do you say we find something with a heartbeat to show everybody? I think let's get going. And let's see if we can find something to show all of you. Taking enough time admiring the scenery, I think. Let's see what we can do. All right. Put my game drive channel a little bit louder so I can hear what the rest of the teams out there are starting to find. Most of the guys will get going now from the various camps, and so James and I are going to be joined by our team of guiding colleagues out here, and together everyone will drive some roads, find whatever tracks are around, whatever's going on, people start hearing things, roaring, alarm calls, anything like that. And slowly but surely we'll start to uncover what is out here. Larry, you'd like to know nights due to alarm calling. Did I get that right, Louise? Just Larry's question again? Sorry, Larry, I'll get it right now. Are animals in more danger at night because there's no alarm calling? I don't think so. I think in general, I think animals that are active during the day are going to be in danger more at night time. Mainly because they're just out of their element. They're out of what they're comfortable with. Now, most animals have got better senses than what we do by many factors, and so they're not completely helpless out there. Okay, we've got some squirrels busy warming themselves on the branch, waiting for the first little bit of sun to come through. So we've got some squirrels that have just come out of their hole and are now just waiting on a branch. You get the first rays of the sun before they've gone inside their home. You just see a tail there. Let's go backwards a little bit. Jumping, gone. How active things you over. I have 3 of them in my house at the moment. And between my wife and my son, they're busy bringing them up. They're fully grown now. They're almost ready to leave. And but they are the most characterful things that I've ever had living with me. The one squirrel, the male squirrel at the moment, he wakes up way before the sun rises and then sits and wants to be groomed by you. So he comes and sits right here in the nape of your neck and wants to be groomed. And when he's had enough, he carries on and is the most active out of all 3 of them. The little female, she lies in bed until at least 9:30. She doesn't come out of her hole until 9:30, and then spends the rest of the day grooming herself and burying nuts in every nook and cranny in my house. She buries a nut. And the other young male just follows her around, basically. It's like they're inseparable. And he doesn't like to be touched. So he comes and offers himself up for a scratch every now and again, but generally speaking, he stays on the periphery and moves around away from us. But definitely every squirrel that we've had in our place has had a different character. And they're very active, very social, very alert. Now, my friend James is also searching for heartbeats like we are. Hopefully we can uncover something for you. And I'm sure he's got an update on what he's been up to and what his plans are.
Well, we have got some impala alarm calling with this, beneath this glorious sun. A lovely picture of oxpeckers landing there. But they're not very enthusiastically alarm calling. It's just a very kind of subtle alarm call. You know, once or twice one of them will go pfft, and they stop. So either they're smelling something, like doggies on the wind, or one of them spotted something a long way away. But otherwise, let's just have a quiet listen to the dawn chorus. You can hear some crested barbets calling. Might also be able to hear the oxpeckers going. Otherwise it really is very quiet. How beautiful is that picture? Just stunning. But I must confess, like I said yesterday, the dawn chorus really has become quite silent. I don't remember it being this silent before. I now cannot hear a bird. Not even a franklin is calling. It really is almost eerie. Bless you, Sebastian. Right, our plan from here, as you look at the sunrise, is going to be to go towards Buffelshoek Dam to see what young Tingana got up to last night. And we'll see maybe if the wild doggies pitched up again. Alrighty. Cobalt, sorry, I missed that. The game drive was going at the same time. No, Cobalt, I think it's quiet because it's winter, so none of the animals are, or none of the birds are breeding at the moment, and so it's just going to be a little less loud than it would be normally. But I seem to remember winter having lots more in the way of Franklin song and that sort of thing, so I'm really not sure why it is that we don't have any sound at all. Alrighty. I believe Steph, who is we discovered yesterday likes to tap dance in his room. We're now discovering he's become an expert on singing and sound, and he'd like to give you his impressions as to why there is no sound in the mornings.
No, I would not. I think James is fishing for me to sing a song or dance a dance is going to end up being this week's flavour of the week. It is fairly quiet at the moment, to be honest, but not unusually so in my opinion. I think it's a question of just driving into an area where there is some tracks. It's always difficult when you just drop into an area. It takes a little bit of time to get the feeling and the flow of where animals are going. There's obviously animals move from one place to another, and they do that for a whole bunch of reasons. They'll do it for food, they'll do it for water, they'll do it to get away from predators or get toward prey. And this takes them in cycles, and it seems a little bit haphazard and irregular, but in fact there is a pattern to it. And it's just a question of spending enough time out to understand that pattern. For instance, when we haven't seen a leopard, a particular leopard, for any amount of time, or we knew that 2 or 3 days ago that leopard went north or went east or went west, you know that leopard is due back again within a day or two, and you'll start to check the areas where they frequent, and all of a sudden you'll pick up some tracks, and very soon after that you'll pick up that animal. Same with lion. When you know that we haven't seen this pride in some time, and you've been out there for long enough, you'll start to realize that there's this pattern to things, there's this ebb and flow. And it's just a question of both James and I just getting into the flow of things out here, and for us to start expecting things in certain areas, and then to start concentrating our efforts in those areas. And we'll start to pull out things. It's just a matter of time. And of course, every guide out here has the same thing. And there are some guides at the end of their work cycles that have been driving for 6 or 7 weeks already that seem almost mystical in their ability to predict where things are going to be, but it's just because they're in this flow of things. And it takes a few days at least. And of course, on a windy night like last night, where almost anything can happen, you don't know what's running around out there. Things can move in and move out, and it's just a question of looking at the ground, listening, switching off the car often enough to listen to some, or listen for alarm calls, following up on tracks, listening to the radio and what your colleagues are about, and we'll find something to show you. It is far colder now than it was when we started this morning. Easily 5 or 6 degrees colder than it was. Oh. YouTube viewer, you'd like to know if we have any animals that hibernate during our dry season or our winter season? Not that I know of. It doesn't get that cold. I mean, in this particular area, we complain that it's freezing, but in actual fact, it very rarely gets even close to 0 degrees centigrade. And so, no, we don't have any mammals that need to hibernate, but they will change their activity periods significantly. So they will either shorten activity periods at night or lengthen activity periods into the daytime. For instance, puff adders, they're obviously not mammals, but it's one of the examples that I can use right now. Puff adders will change from being snakes that are active at night time in summer to snakes that are active in the middle of the day in winter. And using a mammal as an example, aardvark will quite often change on a cold day or a cold evening, or change their activity periods from roughly midnight in summertime to, I don't know, lunchtime. I've seen aardvarks around in the Kalahari 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 12:30, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's in South Africa. Just obviously more on the western side in the desert, and it does get a lot colder than it is here. So specifically hibernating, no. Will they change their activity periods because of temperature variances? Absolutely. Now, last night there were some wildebeest here on Impala Plains, so we're going to go and stick our head into the plains and see if they're still there, see if nothing has managed to chase them around through the course of the evening. I'm really impressed at the amount of grass that Djuma has this year compared to just 20 kilometers in that direction. Wisteria, you'd like to know what my favorite season is. I quite enjoy summertime, just because there's a massive diversity of life. But autumn here, late May, is also a very special time. You get a lot of mist developing, and these misty mornings that we had a few weeks ago, a few of you might remember those deeply misty mornings, are really special to be in. And also, after a summer time of very thick bush and grass, it's sometimes nice to get the grass lying down and the trees to defoliate their leaves so that you can see a little bit deeper into the bush. So I quite enjoy May. And then obviously any of the summer months, so from December right through to February, are my favorite times. And it's mainly just because of the diversity. Insects and amphibians and reptiles and mammals, there's just a lot to see out here. And everything doing a lot as well. Right, so we're coming up to Impala Plains now, and we'll see if those wildebeest are still here. I'm expecting them to be, unless something has chased them off or they've gotten moving earlier on today than what we expected. They didn't come this way. The tracks are not on the road. And let's see. Of course, not a wildebeest in sight. Let's just take a second to look and see around here and see what we can see. Let's switch off our car and see what we can see with the camera. I can see a vehicle moving. That's at least one thing. Let's scan with my binoculars and see if we can see anything else over here. It is a fairly elevated site, which is quite nice. I wonder where these wildebeest went. Unless they got off eating earlier this morning. I can't see anything. Davey, can you see anything? No? Not yet. Right, let's keep on going on to the other side of... So I can see their tracks here on the floor. It looks like they moved off. Oh, they spent a bit of time here. Let's go look on the other side of Impala Plain and see if we can pick them up on the other side of this open area. This open patch of ground extends out in the way that we're going to be driving now. There are no lion tracks here, so it doesn't look like they were chased off by anything. Jeff, you'd like to know if there's any more of the larger animals that we're likely to see during the winter months. Jeff, this particular area has a dramatic increase in elephant, almost double the amount of elephant in it during the winter months than what there are during the summer months. And so from now until October, at least anyway, we're going to be seeing a significant increase in elephant and buffalo sightings, I'm predicting. So we should see a lot more of them as the dry season progresses. They start to come into this area mainly because of the large amount of surface water that there is available, but also the trees in this area. They start to move in and start to feast on the trees and move off of the grasslands that occur further east of here. So elephant would be one, buffalo would be another, mainly just because of the surface water that's available here. And there's also a lot of good grass cover this year, as opposed to just even 20 kilometers north of here. A friend and I, over a 20 meter by 20 meter block yesterday, couldn't even pick up 20 pieces of grass. So all of those animals are going to be coming in here as well, I'm sure, or into this local area, this local geographic area. Make use of the forage that's available. So things like wildebeest, waterbuck, buffalo. Right, we've got some tracks over here. We're going to try and decipher what tracks these are, make sure that they're not anything worthwhile following. James is on his way to Buffelshoek Dam to follow up on that leopard, and so I'm going to go and get an update from him.
Yes, he is heading towards Buffelshoek Dam. The temperature has not improved a great deal. The light is quite pretty. I think somebody's had a look for Tingana. I don't think they found him. And we'll go and have a look there anyway, and maybe we'll come across a great big pack of wild dogs. Who knows? We've seen one in Nyala since I last saw you. That's been the sum total of our game viewing. What's happening, Seb? We got a flat tire now?
No, don't worry, I'm checking the gimbal of the John.
Oh, you're checking the gimbal. Okay, good. We don't have a flat tire yet. No, I would not be surprised to have 4 flat tires today. Before we left where we were parked for the drone, I'd managed to push something on the keys here, and when I tried to start the car, it began that horrendous hooting sound it makes, that honking noise. Nobody knows why. There's some vultures up there. And I don't know if you remember, but at the end, I think it was a TV show. I'm not sure if it was a TV show we did it in the middle of, but we were sitting with Hosana and Karula and Shongile, and no, it was not with Jamie, it was me, but it happened to me first. And I was with Brian, and we've been desperately trying to, ingratiate ourselves to the landowners of Buffelshoek and Torchwood, because we want to make sure that everyone's got good relations in this area. And I'll stop here just quickly for those vultures while I tell you the story. And there was this old fellow who came into the sighting. Very clearly that they come on safari very often, all in their good safari gear, and he brought his friends with him. All very polite, very the bush etiquette was superb. And as I started the car in this leopard sighting, well, Jigger's hooter went off. I think it was Wendy's actually, and I couldn't stop it. I just couldn't stop the noise. And the leopards looked up. They didn't react hugely badly, but these poor people with whom we were trying to ingratiate ourselves for 5 minutes had to watch the leopard and endure this terrific sound. It was really very funny in the end. It wasn't funny at the time though. So those are white-backed vultures. I think they've come down and probably have already finished, yes they have, the stomach of the impala that was killed here yesterday by wild dogs. I'm just trying to see if I can see Tingana. I can see the tree that he was in. Let's move forward. Carol, I think there's a wild dog den in the area, but by in the area I mean north of the Manyeleti. So if you look on the dashboard here, I'll just try and give you a brief sort of idea. If that's Djuma, right? Let's make Djuma, let's say that's Djuma there. Just north of Djuma here is Buffelshoek, right? And north of that, so just on the bonnet here, is the Manyeleti. And I think that there's a den just inside the Manyeleti there, and the dogs are making forays down here pre-dawn, having a look around, killing, and then going back to the den site to feed the puppies before the light comes up. So yes, I mean this is den time. It's not on Djuma, the den, that's for sure. It could be in northern Buffelshoek, except that all of the landowners are there at the moment because there are school holidays on, and they would have found it by now. They would almost certainly have found a wild dog den. So I think it's north of Buffelshoek. Alrighty, let's just go and see if our pal is in his spot. You notice how I didn't even make reference to Scuba Steve this morning. He's lost his girlfriend. That's sadness. Bad luck, Scuba. I must confess to you that she looked a little bit, well, she didn't look like the friendliest lady, and perhaps you're better off on your own there. Let's go down here. Oh. This is where the stomach was, where the vultures ate the stomach, I think. There is the patch of blood where the poor impala was disemboweled yesterday. Dreadful word that, disemboweled. And there, something's up there. Something's going on here. It was either the movement of a leopard's tail, or perhaps even a vulture moving off the ground. I'm not sure. Let's just get up here quickly before whatever it was disappears. That's a human being. There are some human beings there, but that wasn't what I saw. But it could have been a vulture coming off the ground because there were human beings. It's Taxon. And his guests, all of his guests look like they're dressed up for a prolonged expedition to the North Pole, despite the fact that it's really, by our standards, not very cold. We're just here at the tree where Tingana was yesterday, but he seems not to be here. Alright, let's go back to Steph and find out about his tracks.
So James is probably the best suited to rooting out where Tingana went, so I'm sure he's going to have some luck at least finding at least the direction where he went. We've been trying to find those wildebeest, or at least what caused them to move, with no luck. There was a hyena that came past. Those were those tracks that you left us with, was a hyena rather than lion, but no sign of those wildebeest whatsoever. It's actually incredible. Oh, we've got some impala. And you'll actually see when you go close on that impala, if you can, you'll see that they've got a fuzzy appearance to them. And that's because their fur is sticking up. There's a little erectile muscle at the base of each hair, and it causes the hair to stick up, very similar to how it does on our bodies, and that's to slow the passage of air across the skin and obviously gives the body some insulation. It really has become quite unpleasant out here from a temperature point of view, although they don't seem to mind. This is about the only herd of animals that's been in the place that we've expected them to be. These impala, they're now moved off of the open area, and what they've gone is they've moved into the thickets, and they're going to be feeding there for the morning. And I moved off of this open patch. Well, we're going to carry on going and see what we can find. We've seen a couple of birds sunning themselves in the top of the trees. Nothing much is moving. Let's see if we can find you a few more as we go along. Or anything else. It doesn't look like anything has moved up onto Djuma from the south. Louise says right now she'll take anything that's moving, so if that isn't an instruction, then I don't know what is. Just to be better. We're keeping our eyes peeled on these thickets. There are those two wild dog around from yesterday, plus there's Tingana, and he can move some incredible distances. Then there's also lion prides and nomadic lions, and there's a whole bunch of stuff around at the moment. So it's just a question of rooting them out of this bush. And seeing where they've all gone. Let's see if there's something sunning itself over here. Now, Jason, you'd like to know what the most shocking experience I've had with a predator has been. One that comes to mind is a story that I've told a few times, and it's one of my scariest moments on foot with a lion. I came up to the side of a little drainage line with some guests on a walk, and a lioness was either protecting her cubs or a kill, probably cubs if I just think about... Oh, here we go. We'll carry on with the story in a little bit. Louise, you have your wish. One of the largest heartbeats in the animal kingdom is this giraffe. A big male giraffe. Big old male. You can see his ears have been eaten off by oxpeckers and ticks. He's standing in the sun, not minding the cold at all. A common giraffe. His ossicones are lying a little bit skew in his head. They kind of look like he needs some braces, Louise says. I think they're fairly parallel. I think that one is a little bit skew off to the side. He's looking like he's been around the block a little bit, this guy, hasn't he? Missing ear, horn slightly skew. Where are you going now? So this is a male giraffe, and we can tell that by the bald ossicones on the top of the of his head. Ossicones are, of course, the giraffe's horns, and unlike horns from an impala or kudu that grow after birth, giraffe are born with their horns lying flat on their skull, and then the horns spring erect and then fuse to the skull as they get a little bit older. It's a little bit different. It's really nice of this giraffe to have placed himself precisely in that gap for us to have a look at. And he's quite inquisitive as to us. He created a little bit of... Quite inquisitive. He's now just created a little bit of distance between us and him. He was slightly uncomfortable. And now he's moved off and he feels well protected where he is. That's probably about 30 yards, 40 yards away from where we are at the moment. And he feels well safe. Now, giraffe, like every other animal out here, they come and go, and sometimes you see giraffe and some. These bull giraffe are nomadic between herds of females and checking on the sort of breeding status of females in a group, and if there's no female that is coming into estrus soon, then they'll move on to the next one. And when giraffe bulls get to a herd that has got a receptive female in it, quite often you find a couple of males hanging around, first youngsters or groups of youngsters, and then these old big bulls come in, and they'll actually battle out for the mating rights. And once the job is done, they move off and leave mom to do all the hard work. Now they do get hammered by ticks, these guys, and what quite often happens is ticks go and lie in their ears. Now, although oxpeckers will keep what they can away, if the giraffe's condition is bad, they can get quite full of ticks, and their ears start to bleed. Those of you who have got dogs in areas where you have a lot of ticks and flies, you'll notice that the flies sometimes make the dog's ears bleed, and then red-billed oxpeckers will come about and glean the flesh off of the ears, and quite often it does damage. That what you're seeing there is most probably from oxpeckers. He would have gone through a bad patch somewhere along his life where his system was a bit down, and obviously being healthy the way he is, he's managed to recover. Now he's busy snacking on a buffalo thorn, using those incredibly dexterous lips to strip off the leaves. Now, Asteria, you said you love those giraffe eyelashes. I absolutely do as well. Their eyelashes and their lips are, for me, the best. Their lips are actually incredibly hard, like a bicycle tire. Their lips and their tongue are really impervious to these thorns. I had the fortune of being able to touch a sleeping giraffe's lips and tongue. It was the first thing I wanted to come and inspect on the giraffe when I could finally get my hand there. I was absolutely amazed at how tough those, what looked to be quite velvety lips and tongue is. See how careful they use their long tongue. It's prehensile to a degree, which means that they can stick it out of their mouth and wrap it around something to bring it close to the lips, and then just use the tips of the lips to preen off the leaves. There you go. A nice view of how prehensile their tongue can actually be. Also a ruminant, so he'll spend a good portion of his morning eating a belly full of leaves, and then we'll go and stand in the heat of the day. We'll go and stand under the shade somewhere, or lie down in the ruminating posture, and then chew his cud. It's a dark giraffe as well, eh? Now that we can see a little bit more of his body. All right, so back to my lion story, where one of the most scary things that I've encountered on foot with lion that Jason was asking. So basically, we were looking at a noise a tree was making. Two tree boughs were rubbing against one another in the wind and was making the most unbelievable creaking noise. And I had walked up to this to go and inspect it. Couldn't see anything and turned my back on the tree and was waiting for my guests. And of course, as I turned my back and my guests arrived at me, this lioness bounded out of the grass on the other side of this drainage line, straight at my back. I turned around and shouted at her, and she stopped in the sand, and she reversed then into the bush again. And for 15 minutes, she kept me eyes locked with her. Every time I tried to break eye contact with her, she'd charge at the group again. And we were so close to her, she didn't allow us to take a step back. So basically, every time I tried to break eye contact or take a step back, she came barreling out of the bush again. Now, I mean, think of the scariest dog that you've ever seen in your life, or a Rottweiler or a Mastiff, and just double that size. And that's how big a lioness is, with no fence or gate between you and that dog. And, well, in my case, it was a lion, but in your case, it might be an angry dog. And then stand and stare this animal down with a group of people behind you whose lives are in your hands and who are unpredictable. You don't know if someone's going to run away or if the pressure's going to mount. They're going to start screaming. I, in actual fact, had one of the group was a young girl who was so scared that she started to hyperventilate. And I had to tell her to breathe normal because she was going to pass out. And then myself and my tracker, in addition to trying to keep the lioness off of us, would need to drag or carry this girl out of the sighting. Anyway, after about 15 minutes, this lioness retreated once again into the bush, and her growls were still ferocious, but she didn't seem like she was as committed to wanting to kill us. And we took one very careful step back, and then another one and another one, and we eventually created enough distance for her growls to subside into nothingness, and we walked back then to our vehicle, which was parked about an hour's walk away. And when we got back to the walk, everyone was still very shaky, except the last person in the group. For the first 10 minutes of the sighting, the guy didn't understand what we were making all this noise about. He couldn't understand why we were staring fixedly into the bush, why this bush was making all the noise, because he was at the back of the group, slightly elevated and behind a bush. He couldn't see what was going on. So he didn't even know that there was a lion there. That's crazy, yeah? In any case, no one was hurt, and the lioness wasn't hurt, and everyone was safe. But that, Jason, probably is the story that comes to mind the most, of the most scary encounter that I've had of an animal out here. There are a few others, of course. I think as I start to dredge up the memories in my very sluggish brain this morning, we'll probably be able to chat about a few more. Let's see if we can get another view of this giraffe. While we've got something with the heartbeat, we might as well make the most of it. Let's see if I can get you a better angle here, Dave. There we go. Now, he is a very dark giraffe. You do get very blonde or light giraffes. And he's a common giraffe, so one of the tallest of all the different subspecies of giraffe. There's about 7 of them, I think. And so he's a brunette giraffe. They will get a little bit darker as they get a bit older, and sometimes they can get these hairless patches of skin on them from a mite that infests them from time to time. His coat looks beautiful, though. Isn't that just the most unbelievable sight that you've seen? Long serpentine neck with a head on it. I mean, you took that picture to someone 300 years ago and told them you'd found a monster of some epic proportions, and they'd absolutely believe you. It's the most weird animal. All right. While he's busy enjoying his breakfast, we're going to send you over to James, who's got an update on Tingana for you. Well, hopefully.
We've got some helmet shrikes here in a bird party being led inevitably by the southern black tit. And so obviously there's a little flush of something for them to eat here. There's also rattling testicular. That was a little flash of brown you saw to the left. So they're all moving together in a feeding party. It's the white-crested helmet. Makes no sense. Used to be called the grey helmet shrike, which makes all the sense in the world. Unfortunately, the ornithologists, as I like to say, are a gormless bunch, and they like to name these birds nonsensically so that they don't make any sense to those of us who are not professionals. There's a fork-tailed drongo flying in there. You see them just knocking about in the background. I'm going to disagree profoundly with Steph and tell you that the yes, those were leaves. Well done, Seb. And tell you that it's not going to be hot today. There's a bitter cold wind coming from the south, a big cold front. There's the southern black tit. Also here, sounds like sunbirds. So there's a much nicer one in the sun, just right up ahead here, on that very scraggly Gymnosporia buxifolia bush there. There we go. There's the southern black tit, highly underrated bird. Oh, he's caught a caterpillar. He's murdering it. Oh, and he's not swallowing it whole, he's eating it like a raptor. You see that? He's tearing it into pieces and eating it. That's not common for birds. They will normally swallow those things whole. Obviously the southern black tit is different. That's very interesting. This is the best southern black tit sighting I think we've ever shown you. We've got some more there. He's still there, yeah. Let's stay with him. See if he catches another caterpillar. So obviously there's still a few caterpillars around. And he'll go from leaf to leaf looking. Can you imagine the joy he must have felt when he found that caterpillar on this blustery cold morning? He must have been so deeply pleased. No, he's gone. So they are often indicators of bird parties, very seldom foraging on their own. There the helmet shrikes are still. And the fork-tailed drongo. Good morning, Mr. Drongo. You seem to have a bit of your breakfast above your right eye. That's his left eye. Turn the other way. Turn the other way. Other way. There. Well done. You need to use a napkin, or you're going grey and old. So all of these birds insect eaters, and when they feel like the southern black tit has found something worth eating, or a gathering of caterpillars, they'll often all feed in together. The drongo will eat caterpillars, but mostly they will catch flying insects. These chaps will feed in much the same way that the southern black tit does. They will glean over leaves and branches. This gives you an idea how many insects there must be when you see how many birds there are, even in winter, with a beastly cold wind blowing. There's the southern black tit again. Joth, I think the most common birds we see here are hornbills, both varieties, the red-billed and the yellow-billed. I think they're the ones that we see the most. Also franklins, crested franklins, we'd see them quite often on the roads. So between the hornbills and the franklins, I'd say those are the most common birds that we see out here at Djuma Private Game Reserve on the western fringes of the Great Kruger National Park. All right. So we continue down this road. We're heading due south along our eastern boundary. Brr. I don't know the answer to that, Robert. I guess the tidiest or neatest bird would be either a bird that is very clean about its nest, and some of them are very fastidious cleaners of their nests, some are not. The hornbills are not, particularly fastidious cleaners. And those, something like a paradise flycatcher. I mean, if you've ever seen the nest of a paradise flycatcher or a white-crowned shrike, they're just the most perfect little cup-shaped nests, lined with spiders' webs, woven with grass. The detail and care that goes into making them is quite something. I guess the weavers are pretty clean. I think they empty their nests of dung and horrible things like that. Let's do some more birds. There's another black and white bird there, the magpie shrike. Again, used to be called the long-tailed shrike, which makes all the sense in the world. Because it's a shrike and it has a long tail. But why make things simple? What is the purpose of simplicity when you could overcomplicate things for no reason? Very nice. We'll see day of the black and white birds today. Day of the pied birds. I often feel, I wonder if these animals and if the birds are sort of considerate of the weather. Do they wake up and think, oh, it's going to be cold today, I'd rather just stay huddled here in our huddle in the shelter of this bush? Or do they just wake up and mechanically go about doing what they have to do? Their body's registering the cold, but they're not perhaps feeling anything too much about it. Yes, I think Louise is absolutely correct. The dwarf mongoose definitely feel like they're not going to get up when the weather's like this. Icy breeze. Ooh, and there's a hornbill just in front of us there, Seb. Get out of the way. A junior red-billed hornbill, I call him a junior, he's just below now because he's got a shorter beak than normal. See if he pops up with an insect. No, why would he? In keeping with our general luck, he's going to stay on the ground. Alrighty, let's continue going. Yes, by now I would normally have taken off at least a layer or two. My leggy blankie would be off, but my leggy blankie is wrapped firmly around me. What was that? Oh, okay. I believe that Stefan's got something to show us, but I have no idea what it is.
I also don't know what it is. We haven't seen anything. We did see a Daker running off at full speed though, so there has been something more with the heartbeat. But at the moment we're just trying to stay warm. It's freezing at the moment. We started in actual fact to condense, which we weren't doing at 5 o'clock or 4:30 this morning. There was no condensation coming from our mouths whatsoever. And even at sunrise it wasn't as bad as it is now. But anyway, it looks like the cold front has arrived, minus the snow that accompanied it for its journey across the continent so far. But definitely harboring some of the chilliness. You know what always amazes me with these cold fronts is that typically a cold front is this spur of, this offshoot of, or eddy of cold air that comes out of the Arctic and then spends a massive amounts of time over a warmer ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, and then comes overland for, I don't know, right here we're 1,800, 1,900 kilometers from Cape Town. So it's had a few days, to sweep across, and it's still so cold it's making me feel like I need a bed and a blanket. I mean, how cold must it be in the South Pole and in the Antarctic? Definitely not a place that I'd like to go and visit. I don't do well with cold. Okay, we've got some leopard tracks here on the floor, which is good. female leopard, but they don't look very fresh. Lots of tracks up and down here. Let's just see if we can decipher what's going on. So there you'll be able to see the tracks that I'm talking about coming out of this road. They look like male tracks, male leopard tracks. And they're going back towards Sydney. Oh, excuse me. The male leopard tracks are here. There you can see there. And there were some smaller tracks here, just further back behind the vehicle. Up and down. I wonder if they met one another. So the female's tracks, I'm just trying to show you. Let's go back to these tracks. So the female's tracks are there. So there's male tracks going this way, and there's the female's tracks going that way. The wind that's been blowing over the last 12 hours or so, it's quite difficult to say, are they the same age or aren't they? We're going to have to see where they go. So let's just go to the edge of the junction over here and see. Let's go and see which direction. I don't know. I'm battling with this car. I'm battling. Right, so the male's tracks cross over here. The female's tracks go down the road, so that's where we're going to be going. The male's tracks come from this side. We urinated on the bush. These look like probably Tingana's tracks. So Tingana would have left Buffelshoek Dam and walked straight this side, and more than likely crossed out at Simambili. But we've got a few of you that are wondering how we tell the difference between male and female tracks, which I can probably show you if we can just get the car into a little bit of a better position. So let me do this first. See if I can put David into a slightly easier position to film. So I'm going to be unplugging myself quickly. Is that okay, Louise? Alrighty. So, Dave, can you see these tracks? All right. So, which ones are you looking at? These ones here or these ones here? These ones here. Okay, so a male track from where you're looking at right now, we come to the back of the track. These are the four toes here. This is the main pad of the track, and we look to the back edge. And a male's track is very rounded. And I don't know if from that angle you can see, but this looks like you having taken your thumb and pushing it into the ground. It leaves a very rounded edge. If we contrast that to the female's track, which is this one right here. Can you see this one, David? Here's the main pad here, and here's the four toes. And here, the main pad, in exactly the same place as we're looking on the male, is angled. So it has a very steep angle to it, with almost a triangular point to it. So that's the difference. Also size. Let me show you the size of the female's track on this piece of grass. Her track is this long. The male's track is a good third longer. So that's the length of the male's track, and that's pretty average for a big male leopard. So female track, full grown, male track, they both look fairly fresh. I'm looking at where the wind hasn't managed to bother the tracks at all. And I'm going to now see time frames. Here are the two male tracks and the female track walked almost on top of one another. In actual fact, here's where they crossed over. Although I'm gathering that I'm going to start to lose the ability to speak to you soon. All right, so these tracks are just as fresh as the male's tracks. I think they're good enough to follow. So let's do that and see if we can't pick up this female at some point. Very nice. Plug myself back in. There we go. I'll plug back in. Let's see where they go. Right, while we decipher where this female goes from here, why don't we go and see what James has got on his vehicle?
I'm most impressed that Steph's managed to find some leopard tracks. We're sitting here with the Cape Glossy Starling, which is very, very beautiful in this light. I know it is a Cape Glossy Starling and not a greater blue-eared Glossy Starling, because it does not have a great and blue ear. And now the only way you can tell that is in this light. If you were to see the two of them together in light that isn't as good as we're looking at now, they would look almost identical. So that is the Cape Glossy Starling, common resident, especially around camps in the Kruger National Park, where despite the best efforts of park authority to make people not feed them, they are fed by crumbs and scraps. Here comes another one. Oh, beautiful. Look over there, back on the original post there, Seb. At the top. Very pretty. And you can just maybe hear them making their call. Boodloop, 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 boodloop. Louise says that she thinks starlings always look like they're on their way to a ball or a formal party. Well, certainly they do have the sort of shimmer of a ball gown. That's a lovely shot. Now, very interestingly, when you look at one of those things in the thermal, you basically can't see them. They're the same colour as they are otherwise. And that's not because of the reflective nature of the feathers, it's because they are such very effective insulators. So those birds are completely insulated. And it's why I guess they can be so small and yet hang around in temperatures like this without having to run around and have stupidly high metabolisms or hibernate. You know, they don't have to hibernate at all. And I'm sure that's got a lot to do with the insulation that they have. Good. Well, oh, we've got a few more there. YouTube viewer, the shimmer on the feathers is iridescence. And it's a complicated sort of interaction of light with various air pockets and melanin, basically. And what that does is the impression of greens and blues and purples. Actually explain it, but basically certain wavelengths of light are absorbed depending on the pattern of melanin and pockets of air, and then certain others are reflected because of the absorption of some. And it really does depend on that's why when the angle changes, the color changes. Judy H., who sent me a wonderful article on bird coloration, and there are 3 ways that a bird produces color. One of them is through sort of pigments, normal pigments or carotenoids. Another is through this iridescence. The third one, naturally, I've forgotten. There we are. You see how the angle changes, or the color changes, when the angle of the bird to the light changes. Alrighty, let us continue. will find that out again. I've saved the article somewhere. Remembering where I've saved it, of course, makes a big difference. Alas, my earpiece in the wind is not working. We are going to Steph, apparently. Could he be with Scuba Steve?
All right, we've decided that we're going to do something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. We're going to be making a plaster cast track of Tingana's track, and then we'll carry on. So what I've done is, you can see there, I've ringed in one of his prettier tracks, and that's basically just using some sand and pushing it together into a ring around the track that we can. Now we're going to mix some plaster, and what I need to do is get myself a spoon. So I'm just going to bend down here, get myself a mixing stick, and this sort of plaster, this plaster you can buy from almost any drugstore basically. It's fairly common and really inexpensive, and to do plaster tracks with kids is just the most awesome thing. We have wild dog, leopard, giraffe, a couple of things in our house, I think. I'm just trying to undo this with my frozen hands. It's going to be a difficult thing. We'll mix it quickly. Mixing this sort of stuff is you need a bit of a mixing cup so that you can decide how much you're going to be making. I'm just going to do it off my seat here so that we can do it without making too much of a mess. It is quite a messy thing, this. So I'll quickly just make a mixture. It is the ratio is 2 to 1. So I'm going to use enough plaster that we can fill the track. All right, but while I'm busy mixing it and chewing on my cable and getting everything over here, we're going to go through to James, and then when I'm pouring it, we'll come back to you. All right, catch you now.
It's not often that we find these guys of late. Not really sure why that should be the case. But we have some lovely zebra. Easy to identify by the fact that they are obviously striped horses. So that's quite nice. Oh, we can quite nicely see the structure of this herd here. I think that, yeah, that chap you're looking at there looks to me like the stallion. And you can see the size of him in comparison with the others. He's quite a lot bigger. So normally what happens here, of course, is we have a kinship group which is led in front by the first wife of the stallion, and then they go in order from then, and then the herd is normally, the rear is brought up by the stallion. This is if they're moving, and when they're grazing like this, they'll spread out slightly, and then when they move off, they'll readopt their sort of pattern. You can hear a vehicle going past. That is just one of the game drive vehicles. I think that's quite a nice picture, really. Yes, Arlarmoor, they prepare themselves for cold fronts, these animals. They know they're coming by watching the news at night. The zebra news tells them what the temperature's going to be, and they prepare by, you know, collecting wood for their fires and making sure that their clothes are warm. I'm obviously being entirely sarcastic. Arlarmoor, I don't think they are able to predict necessarily what the weather's going to do. The classic example is the tsunami that happened in Southeast Asia all those years ago. What year was it? It was about 2003, I think. Anyway, that horrific tragedy that occurred there. 2004, apparently. Anyway, apparently I'm told that the animals all started to move away before the wave hit. So they had some sense of the impending doom that was coming while the human beings carried on, oblivious. Now here, I'm pretty sure that there are animals that can sense changes in air pressure, and of course that should give them an indication as to whether it's going to get hot or cold. So I think they probably can do that, but they're obviously unable to prepare for it. I mean, they can't, it'll be warm in one day, and then it'll be cold the next day, and so it's not like they can lay down extra fat. It's not like they can lay down extra fat. Sorry, there's just a fight going on the game drive radio. It's quite amusing. It's not like they can lay down extra fat when they suddenly feel the temperature drop. And they must come out and feed. So I suppose if it gets cold and they feel cold, then they'll get into sheltered areas and try and avoid the wind, like on a day like today. But eventually they've got to get out and eat. So, no, they might be able to sense a slight change in pressure, but in this area there's absolutely no migration at all, and so they don't move much there. I guess it's if we look at the wildebeest and other migrating animals of the Mara Serengeti ecosystem, we're not entirely sure, as far as I know, why or how they're able to follow the rain. Whether it's seeing the storms and the rain falling, which makes them run towards it, whether it's smelling the water coming out of the sky, or whether it's slightly more sophisticated than that. Maybe they can sense a change in pressure and are able in some way to navigate like that. If birds are able to navigate using the Earth's magnetism, if dung beetles are able to navigate using the stars, one would think that perhaps there might be an animal that can sense pressure changes sufficiently to be able to navigate by those. So it's a really interesting question. But in essence, I don't think they can do much. And remember also, that the temperature extremes here are so small in comparison with what they are at higher latitudes that, I just don't think it would be necessary for them to have evolved the capacity to do it. They get slightly longer hair in the wintertime, and they just cope with being slightly over hot, I guess, and slightly cold. So that's my answer to that, R. Larimore. I hope it is satisfactory in some way. Some typically kind of chilly winter like this, sort of watery sunshine, I like to call it. So nice to see these things again. Ashton, a zebra stallion will stay with his herd for as long as he's able to. In other words, for as long as he's not being tossed out by a rival male who might come in. And even then, he's apparently, I have read that they do have the loyalty of their females. Basically, once they've been mated, the mares have been mated, and they've had foals with a certain stallion, they'll normally stay with him, I think, almost until he drops dead. And then they'll move on fairly quickly, I imagine. But that's probably got a lot to do with avoiding infanticide. So if they stay around with their male, and they don't flit about and philander, basically what it means is that strange males will not kill their foals. But he will stay with his herd for as long as he possibly can. And he'll just take new wives if he's particularly either well-heeled, obviously zebras can't be well-heeled, or if he's young and strong and vigorous enough, or if he loses a wife. Normally it's 3 or 4 wives. I'm looking around here, and I think we've probably got, I think 3 wives and some attendant offspring. maybe 4. I do hope that Steph is not going to have cause to use his plaster for a broken limb.
Alrighty, and now you're back with us after James's recitation of him being a stallion and all. He is actually quite a stallion. Oak gallops as fast as a horse. I've never seen anyone run quite like him ever. Now we've mixed enough of this now to hopefully fill the track. We've, what I've done is I've made the earth wall around the track itself a little bit higher, because you really want a thick base to your track. You don't want it to be too thin, otherwise it'll crack. So now you carefully pour your mixture in, hopefully not to disturb the track too much. And then you fill it all the way to the top. We can actually add some more. I'm not going to sit here and wait for it the whole time to dry. This is going to take a few hours to dry. And eventually when it does dry, we'll come and fetch it. So we're going to leave it out here to dry. Let's just get some more of this here. My spoon wasn't the most fantastic spoon. If someone drives through it, it's going to ruin the track, unfortunately, which is why we've put it here on the corner. But what I will do is put a stick in front of it as well to stop that from happening. So hopefully people won't damage it too much. Luckily out here, a lot of people have done this sort of thing. So there you go. So now you just hem it in, and that'll give you as much as of a chance as you can. That'll now dry over the next couple of hours, and when we pick it up, it'll be the imprint of Tingana's track, hopefully for us to see. So we're going to give it a few hours to dry. The wind and the fact that there's so little moisture in the air should dry it out fairly quickly, and we should be able to see the fruits of our labor soon. Now I'm going to get myself a stick so that somebody doesn't drive it over, and obviously finding that is going to be a mission. But let's try here. We've got some sticks this side. Trying not to get scorpioned in the interim. That should do it for now. We'll leave that there. Hopefully, if I didn't pour it in too vigorously, we'll have quite a lot of detail. The amount of detail that you can get from these tracks, from these plaster casts, is actually quite incredible. I'm just mixing my cup. Nice little bit. Get all the plaster out the bottom, because once this stuff sets, it'll take significant amount of time to, let me plug myself in, take a significant amount of time to actually clean if you don't clean it off now. And as you know, I use these things. I told you might be worrying a little bit about animals licking this up and you know, it's solidifying in their stomach. I've never had any of that happen. I've been doing these plaster cast things for literally years and years and years. I've never seen an animal lick it up. You sometimes get them stood on, especially if there's a lot of animal movement in the area. You'll get impala, particularly, are fond of standing on them, which will ruin it. But you know, we try, and eventually we get these things done, and we'll put a track. Once I finish with this track, if it turns out quite nicely, then we'll put it in the library, in the tent, and we can do whatever from there. I keep one of these things around me all the time. My son and I love doing these things in the garden. We actually have a good time. All right. James is somewhere with some hippo. It must be freezing where he is.
Well, they aren't freezing, interestingly enough, because they are so very well insulated. And we know that now because we've looked at them with a thermal drone, and their bodies give off no heat. The only heat you see coming out of their ears and their noses, and their eyes, sorry, ears and eyes. But they are so well insulated by blubber that their bodies just don't lose heat. So despite the fact that this is a miserably cold day, they're very happy in the water. I've tried to make plaster cast tracks before. I've seen people make beautiful plaster cast tracks before. Mine have always just sort of ended up as amorphous mushes of sand and white plaster that don't look like tracks. They just look like I've tried to stick all the sand together, which is what I have achieved, of course. I did once have a plaster cast on my arm, Seb. I broke my arm. Yes. No, I didn't keep. I'd kept it for a while, but my mother decided that it smelt too bad, so she threw it away. It was quite beautiful, Louise. My cast. It had a portrait drawn on it by a friend of mine. He drew a lady in a bikini on it, which he thought was very funny. It was quite funny, actually. It was so scandalous at the time. I was 14. I remember, because we don't have much else to talk about today, I'll tell you a little story about my childhood. I broke my arm. And, of course, when one breaks one's arm, once one has got over the tremendous sense of pain and self-pity that comes with the pain, one starts to feel like a bit of a warrior. And I broke my arm playing rugby, which made me feel even more like a warrior, except that it wasn't actual rugby, it was touch rugby, which meant that there wasn't actually tackling involved. It was like what you guys, I suppose, in the States would call tag football. It was like that. And some oaf, a few years older than me, had run into me by mistake and sandwiched me by mistake, entirely by mistake, between some other oaf in the class above me, and that had snapped my spindly little left wrist. And so far from it being a warrior-like injury, it was a sort of a mark of shame. It didn't stop me telling a girl I've quite fancied, her name was Sarah. I remember telling her I broke my arm playing rugby. Sarah and I parted company that evening after no more words together. It was a very pathetic effort. First of many for that year and the years after. I've tried to use it as a pick-up line, Louise. I've tried to use injuries as pick-up lines. I just don't look much like a warrior, you see, so I certainly didn't when I was 14. I looked about 6. Louise says, I'm a warrior of words. Thank you, Louise, that's very kind. I think that's what you were being. Anyway, these hippo are not doing a great deal. I think it's probably time to turn around and head for home. Oh, Brutoro, flat. Blubber is fat. It's not thick skin. They do have thick skin, and in fact that's probably a large degree, or to a large degree, responsible for the insulation, but they have a thick layer of fat underneath a very thick layer of skin, and that's that fat that is known as blubber. Righty. In we go. Similar to a whale. You know, a whale maintains its body temperature in the same way. Oh, Joy, we were not looking at an egret at all. Sorry. We were looking at a spoonbill. It's now stuck its spoonbill out. I completely forgot about the spoonbill, simply because the hippo started to perform. So it's a spoonbill, which is very nice to see. Now, what's interesting here, I was going to tell you a whole story about this bird, and then I forgot entirely, is that it's standing on one leg, not because it's doing some kind of yoga pose, but possibly because it is trying to reduce the exposure of bare skin to this chilly wind, and for the same reason it's tucking its beak up underneath its wing, because there's a lot of bare skin around the beak and the eyes and around that leg. And so now its only exposure to the elements is that one spindly leg. Yeah, in fact, Louise is correct. This would look amazing under a thermal camera, which we don't have on the car, in case you're wondering. It does look a little bit like it might blow off its perch at some stage. That is remarkable balance. Very impressive. Yes, no, it's tucking it back. It's too cold. Isn't that cool? That's really awesome. All right, Stefan has left his cast. Let's hope no one drives over it. I'm not sure where he's going for the last few minutes. He will tell you.
Oh, sorry, excuse me. I managed to pull myself out here, I think. So we managed to move on. We're busy tracking the female leopard from that junction that we were at into this area. So there's a very good chance that we've got a female leopard around Djuma main camp at the moment. Last time we had tracks were at the junction, and her tracks were going straight towards Vuyatela Dam. So there's a good chance that we've got a leopard somewhere here. Now, James earlier this morning heard some alarm calls of some unenthusiastic impala, or the unenthusiastic alarm calls, and I wonder if it wasn't because they were either smelling or they'd caught sight of this leopard. I don't see any tracks in the road in front of us at the moment, but nevertheless, we are going to give it our best shot for the last few minutes. And then Herbie's also around, which I'm going to, as soon as we get back to camp, I'm going to tell Herbie that he must come and have a look and see what he can pull out. He's, of course, a very, very decent tracker. And he actually has a student with him at the moment that's busy learning. So put them on these tracks and see if they can dig out something for this afternoon safari. It would be very nice if we could. Oh, David and I were just busy chatting about how chilly it's actually become. I'm actually shivering in the inside of my body, in my diaphragm at the moment. It's making it quite difficult to think of anything else. I don't know about you, Dave. It's going to be nice. Going to have a warm cup of coffee just now and some breakfast, and then go throw ourselves around a running track. Pick up the temperature a little bit. Tonight is going to be special. Now you can see, actually, I'll show you now. Have a look at the blue sky that's all around us. If those of you who were with us this morning, early on, you would have noticed that there was a lot of cloud cover. In fact, the cloud cover actually increased towards sunrise and then disappeared. Now that's because the cold air, which is heavier than the warm air that's in this area, undercuts it. And as the warm air basically, so what happens is this cold air front is coming across the land, and here's warm air here. And the cold air actually goes in underneath the warm air and lifts it up. And as it lifts it up, you get condensation. But as the cold air then moves across, the cloud disappears and the cold air replaces it. And inside this cold air mass, there's no clouds. So what we saw this morning was the cold front come in, lift the warm air up, dissipated and is now marching across here. And of course, we've got the clear skies. And this is going to be with us for it depends on how bad it is, but it's normally about a day to 2 days or so. So we can expect tonight to be pretty chilly, and tomorrow morning, and then from tomorrow afternoon, hopefully it'll start to warm up a little bit again. And we might get 2 or 3 on this far eastern side of the country. We might get 2 or 3 of these in a winter. It's uncommon to get about 5 or 10 of them. And so we'll go back to warm weather fairly soon again. If Louise is speaking to me, I can't hear anything. All right. I'm just making sure that we haven't got another gremlin that's crept into our car over here from a radio point of view. Making sure I'm plugged in again. Yeah, we'll go and fetch the cast, absolutely. We'll give it a few hours to dry out, and then I'll come and fetch it again just before lunchtime and see if it's dried out quite nicely. And hopefully it's worked out all okay, and we can show you what Tingana's foot looks like on that cast. Quite nice. Otherwise, I'll do another one and we'll pick it up for this afternoon. So I'll bring out some more water and some more plaster, and if it didn't work out, I'll do another one and we'll come and fetch it again this afternoon. Oh, I'm busy looking. As we're busy driving, you know, it's a good idea to scan on and see if that leopard track didn't come back onto the ground here. I've got a feeling, though, that she'll probably keep on heading down towards Gallagher, Pan, and then into the Mulwati from there. And we'll see. I don't see any tracks on the road on that side. And we'll see when we get to this junction now what it actually looks like. Oh, even the birds have disappeared. Right. Now, why don't we link to... There's an impala sitting in the bushes over there. So there's a bit of... There gives you an idea of how difficult it is actually to see these guys. These impala that are hiding away in the bushes, out of the wind, conserving the little bit of energy that they have. See how difficult it is to see these guys. Anyway, why don't we send you over to James for the last few minutes of the drive.
Yes, we find ourselves here at Etosha in Namibia. This is what the Etosha waterholes look like, basically. Sort of, not really. Lots and lots of animals coming down to drink at those waterholes. Iconic photographs that people have taken of elephants and springbok and zebra and whatever else they have there. Gorgeous kudus. 1, 2, 3, 4 bulls. They're just going to have a little browse. And one of them, the one on the left, has got mud all over his horns. And I wonder if he doesn't have it all over his horns for the same reason that the topi in the Masai Mara have them. And that, of course, is for territorial display. They seem to muddy their horns. No one really understands the purpose or why. But that's what happens. So we're going to sit in the sun here for the last minute of the drive. It's quite pleasant. And the impala coming down to drink, and Steb and I just wondering why it is that this water is sort of reddish. And you know, Steb, what I think it is that there's no algae in it at all. Whereas all the other waterholes seem to have quite a lot of algae, possibly seeded by the fact that there are hippopotamus making dung there. Whereas this one doesn't have that, and hasn't had that since it was dug and made deeper. Very beautiful. Well, we're going to make our way home now. We're going to fix the tech difficulties that we had this morning. And so all that remains for me to do right now is to thank you once again for being with us on our morning safari. It's been marvellous. Thank you for your patience, for your questions and your comments. We will see you again later at 1500 hours Central African time. Till then, bye-bye.